Like me, you've probably been watching that everything is going up. I mean, inflation is just causing everything to go up in price. Not only that, but credit is getting more expensive. You know, whether it's a mortgage or a car loan, or especially credit cards, the rates are going up. The pressure is more and more on people that have to use credit sometimes. And the reason why I'm talking about this on a Sunday is because the Bible has a whole lot to say about money and about debt. And I believe God doesn't want anyone to live in debt. And we'll talk about that. And like I said, it's timely because starting now, for about the next 30, 45 days, 70% of retail sales are occurring. And the question is, during this time, will we have control over or master our money, or will it master us? Because as wonderful as Christmas is, January's coming. Lest you forgot. And this is a real issue in our country right now. You know, in the third quarter, I just read an article on CNBC this week on Tuesday that said credit card debt in the U.S. right now has crossed the $1 trillion mark. $1 trillion in credit card debt. The average balance of a credit card is $6,000. And that, the average interest rate on a credit card in America now exceeds 20%. This article said people are struggling and they're trying to keep a house of cards from collapsing. Steadily persistent higher prices have caused consumers to spend down their savings and increasingly turn to credit cards to make ends meet. Yet again, this is not God's intention. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a servant or slave to the lender." God's intention is not for you to be a slave. Galatians 5:1, Paul says, "It was for freedom that Christ paid the price on the cross so we could be free." And this is free not only spiritually, but also in every area of life. That as Christ is the center of our life, we should experience more and more freedom. And I realize that for a lot of us, we don't. And today, please hear my heart. I am not here to condemn anybody, to put anybody down. I've made horrible decisions in the past regarding money and bad decisions that have cost us. And we've learned valuable lessons. And hopefully today, you'll learn a few too. But let's just see if you have some financial bondage in your life. Let me poke around like a doctor would, okay? And just see what hurts. And don't respond. Please. You don't have to respond to this anyway. But maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck. You are one car breakdown or one illness away from a financial crisis. Or maybe you find yourself having to put necessities on credit cards. You find yourself only able to make minimum payments. Big picture things like you'd like to get married or be out on your own or have a child or adopt or have one of your spouses stay home. But you can't because the heavy financial burden that you carry. Now, the sad thing is for a lot of people, that's just normal. This is just how they are and where they're living. But I don't believe it is normal. And today, this is not in any way, again, to condemn you. It's to give you hope. Because God wants to really help you get free. And we're going to talk about how we do that today. Because I have watched financial issues destroy marriages, wreck families, bring undue anxiety and pain in people's lives that you were not intended to carry. And again, I know that there are emergencies that come up. But sometimes when we have that choice between trusting God a little longer and just waiting for God to come through, or rushing to borrow money, we make that mistake. Now, there are 2,350 verses in the Bible about money and possessions. Think about that. 2,350 verses. 2/3 of Jesus' parables relate to money, and when you include possessions, particularly 16 of his 38 parables are just about money. 2/3 are about money and possessions. See? By comparison, there's 500 verses about faith, and there's about 500 verses about prayer. So almost 5 times as many verses in the Bible about money and possessions than all these other important topics. Why? Because God knew that how we handle money is a great spiritual barometer of where we are in life, our spiritual maturity. And that's why this is so important. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Your heart follows your money. So wherever your money goes, that's where your attention, your heart, your passion, what you talk about, what you focus on, what you stay up at night worrying about. It follows where your money goes, and that's where your treasure is. And one pulls on the other. When your heart truly belongs to Jesus, though, this incredible thing happens. He rules in our lives. Our identity, our security begin to not come from the brands we wear or the car we drive, but now it comes from the truth that we are the sons and daughters of God. This security makes us know that we are blessed and provided for, and it makes us truly rich. Do you feel rich? Good, some of you do. This verse is for you then. 1 Timothy 6:17, the Apostle Paul says to Timothy, he says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. I like that. God's not just giving us rationing out just our basic needs, but He wants us to be able to enjoy life. He wants you to be able to take a vacation with your family. He wants you to be able to bless others. There's nothing wrong with that. Money is not evil. We need to understand that. Now, I used to skip right over this verse because it didn't apply to me. Why? Because I didn't feel rich. See? If you're not rich, then this doesn't apply. And most of us probably, when we start comparing ourselves, we don't think we're rich. Why? Because there's always somebody down the street with a little more. See? Right? There's always somebody that works the floor above us in the office making more money. They're rich, but we're not. But you'd be surprised. By this world standard, if you have food in your house that would last you for the next few days, you're rich. Because some people don't know where tomorrow's food's coming from. In a lot of the world, they don't. If you have a house and a couple changes of clothes, you're rich. If you have a vehicle, you're rich. Some people are so rich, they have an extra house just for their vehicle. Right? That's rich. If you have clean water, access to medicine, you're rich. Here's the issue. If you don't feel rich, you won't act rich. And if you don't act rich, you'll constantly be trying to get rich because you don't recognize you are rich. See? Like I said, I used to struggle with this idea. And I didn't feel rich, so I was always chasing money. chasing success, chasing the security that comes through it. But when I realized how blessed I am and how good God is and how he blesses me according to his riches, and that his riches are endless, then I feel like I'm doing okay. I'm pretty rich. Everything I need, everything I'm going to need, God is going to provide. So we're not chasing after something. Let me read this again. If you don't feel rich, you'll never act rich. And you'll continue to try to get rich and not recognize you are. See, that's a perspective that we have to have. That we are blessed. We are wealthy. We have incredible resources. Some of the biggest mistakes, like I said, in my life have come from not recognizing that. And what I really want to get to today is this idea that behind all of this, there is a spiritual war taking place that's fighting for your attention and your soul. Jesus says it this way in Matthew 6. He identifies this. He says, "No one can serve two masters. Either he'll hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." Now, this New Living Translation, and actually in the King James, I think they get it more accurate, because the King James uses the phrase, you cannot serve God and it doesn't money, but what's the old word they use there? Mammon, okay? And mammon here is capitalized. So that, got some lights flashing? Oh yeah, just one. Don't mind the man behind the wall there. So Jesus recognized that mammon here, and it's capitalized, that he's not talking about money is this ethereal thing, this amoral thing. He's talking about a demon called Mammon, who is an actual entity in the world. That was really cool. I went to Bing AI, and I said, give me Mammon controlling a person. And that's what AI gave me. Pretty accurate, isn't it? Yeah, like 10 seconds it spit that out. And that's the thing. So, if Mammon is a real spirit, we are not just dealing with something that's inanimate like, money and how we're using it, but where we place it and who has control over it is either God, Jesus, or it's this demonic entity. See, we learn about Mammon in the Old Testament because Mammon was a god that was worshipped in Babylonia. Even in that part of the world, when God floods the earth, remember with Noah? And after that, the next thing we read is the people gather together in this area of Babylonia, and they build this tower. And God was against them building that tower. Why was he against it? Because he had just flooded the world. And the reason why they're building a tower is to escape God's judgment. Because they didn't want to obey God. So they wanted insurance. This was the first insurance policy. We're going to insure ourselves against an act of God, which you see in a lot of insurance claims these days. They still call natural disasters acts of God. And so that was what they were doing. And of course, God dispersed them and so on. Later we see this area come into play because the people of God, the Israelites, are taken to Babylon, the capital city of Babylonia, where they're imprisoned until God sets them free. And then we get all the way to the end of the Bible, and now Babylon is not just identified as a city or a region, but as a demonic being with the same root as Mammon. Because in Revelation 13, this female demonic being is in control. And she's in control of the financial systems of this world. That's where we get the passage in Revelation 13 about not being able to buy or sell, lest a person have the mark of that beast. This is Mammon. But then in Revelation 14:7, it says this. You get down there. Then another angel followed him through the sky, shouting, "Babylon is fallen, the great city is fallen, because she made all the nations of the world drink the wine of her passionate immorality." That describes a lot of people today, drunk on immorality, drunk on greed and selfishness. And so this is the world in which we live. This is why Jesus uses such strong language of hating versus loving. One you're going to be devoted to, one you're going to despise. Jesus didn't say it's possible to serve these two gods, Mammon and Jesus. He said it's impossible. Because Mammon's always whispering to you, all you need is just a little more money. If you can come up with a scheme to get more money, your life's going to be better. Anybody else ever hear that lie? Sure, we all have. And that's what he's whispering. Just come over here. Go to church and pray, but really the rest of your week, be consumed with what you have or don't have. Be consumed with comparing yourself to other people. Be consumed with anxiety over not being able to pay your bills. You can have your hour in church, just so I get the rest of the time. And that's what Mammon's doing. He's trying to drag you away from God. Even if you're successful, he'll tell you you don't have enough. So he'll push you to strive for more. We use money when we know it, when we use it right. We use it as a tool. We use it as a tool to worship God. The Apostle Paul said it's the love of money that's the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered away, wandered from their faith, and pierced themselves through with many griefs. Just look at that for a minute. Looking to money as a god will only cause grief in your life. And if you're eager for it, if that's what you're chasing, if that's your answer, if I give you the choice today between, you can set God at the center of things over here, or I can offer you a big pile of cash over here, I wonder how many people would go for the cash and say, yeah, I can fix myself. See? But God's over here saying, let me help you. Let me enter into the battle with you. I'm not condemning you. I'm not holding against you mistakes you've made in the past. I just want to help you today begin to walk forward into a new chapter in your life. This is interesting that when Paul says here the love of money, that's actually one word in the Greek. And it means a person desperate and extending as far as they can to reach, to grasp hold of something. See, we can't lean in two directions. We can't lean toward God, and we can't lean toward Mammon. It's one or the other. Now, if we lean this way toward Mammon, we may get it, but that's all we get. If we lean this way, we get God, we get eternity with Him, and an abundant life, Jesus said, now. See? So when we stand back, the choice is easy. It's tomorrow when the bills are due and the challenges come and your kids need new sneakers. And your idea of sneakers and their ideas of sneakers is a couple $100 apart. Yeah, we all live there, huh? And you get pulled. Now, some people say, but if I just had more money, Tony, I'd be so generous. But let me tell you, The love of money applies to the rich and the poor. I know greedy poor people, and I know benevolent rich people. See, money just makes you more of what you already are. It's a magnifier. If you're generous, more money just makes you more generous. If you're greedy, more money just makes you more greedy. That's why it says in Ecclesiastes, whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. It is an endless pursuit that you'll never be satisfied. So my challenge is we don't need more money. We just need more faith, more trust in God. You can save forever and not have enough to cover every bad scenario that can happen in life. You realize that? There's always some catastrophe that's bigger than what you can cover. This is why our posture as Christians, and this is so important, it's not sitting around going, what if this happens? Instead, our posture is, even if this happens. Do you see the difference? It's not what if and trying to prepare for this. It's digging in deeper to God and saying, even if disaster comes, we're okay. God's going to take care of us. One leads to peace. One leads to emptiness. One has all the weight on God. The other has all the weight on you. The good news is money can serve us as we serve God. I remember when we first planted the church and we were meeting in the conference center right down the street. We had a family in church that was struggling. It was a difficult season for them. And so during, I think it's Christmas Eve service, can't remember if it was morning or evening, something like that. Maybe it was morning. We just somehow got a key or broke in their house somewhere or something. But by the time they got home, their tree was just filled with presents. Their table was filled with groceries. Their kitchen, in their fridge, there was a ham and a turkey in there. And we were a small group at the time, but people just rallied around and said, let's bless them. And it was such an incredible blessing. Just because everybody did something. And that's why we give. I think sometimes, we're pretty efficient here with, what we do to operate the building and keep the utilities down and all those kind of expenses. But what we want to be able to do all the time is bless people. Bless people in this church that are struggling. Bless organizations in the community that are making a difference and helping people to live better. And the way we do it is because of your faithfulness. Because you believe what I'm talking about today, you give. You honor God, and one of the ways we honor God is with the very first fruits of our income. See, there's two ways to give in church. You can have control over everything you have, your money, it's your money, and then you can pay your bills and do your other stuff, and then when you get to church, you look at what you have left, and if there's a little extra left, you give that to God. That's one way, and it keeps you in control, but it's really mammon that's in control. The way to live surrendered to Jesus is to say, God, first thing before anything else, I'm giving to you. What a lot of people do is tithe. Because we see it throughout the Bible, we talk about the tithe. Tithe is where we start. It's 10%. Tithe means tenth. So we give God the first tenth of our income, and then He blesses the other 90%. Now, you haven't heard me talk about giving or tithing probably for a couple years, because y'all are faithful, and you are givers. And we don't do it out of need at the church. We do it because I feel like right now in this season, some of you are in a place where you're really going to be tempted to pull back in your giving, to pay that extra bill or to buy that extra thing or reward yourself because you're stressed. And in reality, that is hurting you. You need to give to God more than He needs your money. You need to worship God more than He needs your money. God doesn't need your money. What He wants is to be first in your life. And then He wants to show you how He can take care of you. See? But He can't do that unless we trust Him. Now, we've always done, and we used to have a program we handed out. We always had this in a program, but we don't do that anymore. So I need to communicate it here. Tithing is a big risk. 10% of your money, are you kidding? Off the top, first thing? Whew. But here's the deal. Do it. Take a step of faith. We'll take that step with you. You do it for 3 months. If it doesn't work, we'll give you your money back. We'll take the risk with you. No questions asked. You say, I'm going to try this. I hear what you're saying. I see what the Bible says. I want to serve Jesus, not some demonic being with my money. So I'm going to put God first. And like I said, if it doesn't work, we'll give you your money back. We'll take that risk with you. And we've put this challenge out now for 16 years. And it's worked every time. God has just shown up. I think God is waiting, especially in a day like this, in an economy like we're in the insecurity of what's going on with the banks and the markets and all that kind of stuff, and rising rates of inflation and interest, all that kind of stuff. I believe that God wants to show off and wants to bless His people, because we have to be the storehouses so that when people are in need, they know where to come. And they can receive not just resources, but they can receive God's love. Thanksgiving's coming up in a couple weeks, so we're going to buy about $1,000 worth of gift cards. It's like Aldi's, because we did turkeys, and man, turkeys are a bear. They're heavy. Move a truckload of turkeys, and you realize, let's just give out cards. But we're going to give out gift cards to people that come to our pantry next week, and just to bless them and say, go buy groceries on us. And I'm counting on you to help with that. Bray had a couple people come and say, I'll buy a bunch of those, or I'll take care of some of that. As we move toward Christmas, we want to bless families. Not so they can go out and buy a bunch of useless toys for their kids, but so they can give them something, so they can give them necessities and be able to care for them. This is what we want to do. You can break the hold and influence of mammon by giving. Now, I know that sounds like something a televangelist would say, but it's true. The only way you break the power of that hold over your life, that fear and that anxiety of not having enough, is to give to God and trust Him. That's what the prophet did. The woman was about to die. She was starving to death, her and her son. And the prophet Elijah said, here's what I want you to do. Before you die, make a meal. Take your last bit of oil and flour and make a cake and give it to me. How would that go over today in today's media? Local pastor rips off woman for her last meal. I can see it now. The headlines would be everywhere. That would trend on social media in not a good way. So what happens? She does it. How crazy is that? She makes him the meal. And then God multiplies everything she has left, more and more and more and more. And through this entire famine, when everybody else is struggling, this single mom and her son are able to survive. Why? Because she took a huge, huge risk and obeyed God. She just put Him first. And putting Him first in that situation was giving when it didn't make sense and she couldn't afford it. Now, I've never challenged anybody individually that this is what you've got to do. This is something God has to speak to you. But I would encourage you, in the day and hour in which we're living, ask yourself, what am I living for? Who am I living for? Who's pulling the strings in my life? Do I live by faith? Or instead, am I being manipulated by fear and anxiety, by this demonic entity that wants to bring me down? That's what it comes down to. Let me close with this. The verse we read early in 1 Timothy 6, Paul writing to Timothy. I want to read this again, but I want to read it from the Message translation, how Eugene Peterson interprets it. He says, "Tell those rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Tell them to go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage, to do good, to be rich in helping others, to be extravagantly generous. And if they do that, they'll build a treasure that will last, gaining life that is truly life." How many believe that? So today, if you're struggling, there's a couple things that we want to do. I'll have the band come back up. We're going to spend a little bit of time here in worship, do a couple songs of worship, and as we do, this is a great opportunity for you to respond. There's a couple ways you can respond today. One is maybe you just need to have a conversation with God right where you are and kind of wrestle through that. God, what are you calling me? Not what is Tony calling me to, but what are you calling me to? Is there areas where I'm being influenced in a wrong way? Am I really trusting you? Because this is what it comes down to with your money. You either trust God or you don't, right? There's no in between. So I want to challenge you today, like I said, and in this season we're in, to put your trust in God. And the way you demonstrate that is in giving. And so I would encourage you today to take that risk. If you're a couple, talk about it. Say, you know what? Let's get things together. Let's do what's right. And it doesn't have to even be here. I don't care where you give. I care that you give. Okay? Why don't you stand with me? For some of you, you're in a crisis, and you need a miracle in your life. You really do. You need a miracle financially. You just need God to supernaturally provide for you in some way to help you out of the crisis you're in. We're going to have people down here in front this morning. They want to pray with you. This is a day that God wants to bring victory. He wants to start this new season in your life. So I would definitely get prayer. There's also some issues up here that if our ministry team has prayed this week, these are some things in particular that God wants to minister to. So if you identify with any of these issues, that means that God really wants to touch that today. So come down and receive prayer. We also have communion available around the room. Communion is an amazing gift because it's a covenant, a reminder of the covenant that we have with God, that He's going to be faithful to you. And when you get the bread and the cup and you receive that, you're saying to God, God, I trust you. I'm in covenant with you, and you're never going to let me down. And let that be around your resources today. Thank God for the job that you have. Thank God for the people in your life that have blessed you and so on. You don't have to be a member of the church, participate in communion here, just love Jesus. And so I want to encourage you while we do these songs, first and foremost, we start with gratitude. We're going to start off with a song that says, I'll give thanks because you're more than enough. When you're all I have, you're all I need. So I'll give thanks to God. So let's do that this morning. Let's be thankful for how God has taken care of us, how He's blessed us. And let's ask Him to use us more and more.